Imagine a world holding its breath. Two nuclear superpowers locked in a terrifying standoff, eyeball to eyeball. The fate of humanity hanging by a thread. This was the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, famously the closest the world ever came to nuclear Armageddon. But what if, amidst the high-stakes diplomacy and naval blockades, a single unacknowledged aerial skirmish almost plunged us all into the abyss? History books often recount the political maneuvering, the secret deals, the 13 days of global dread. But what they rarely mention is the desperate silent air war being waged above Cuba, where the lives of brave pilots and the actions of nervous ground crews could have, at any second, triggered World War III. This isn't just about spy planes. It's about the dogfight that almost happened. A hidden jet battle that could have tipped the balance and unleashed hell. This overlooked aspect of the crisis reveals a chilling truth that despite the best intentions of leaders, miscalculation, human error, and the sheer chaos of combat could have overridden diplomacy. It explains why, even today, the lessons of near misses in the skies remain as critical as any treaty signed. Join us as we descend into the clandestine operations, the daring reconnaissance missions, and the heart-stopping close calls that define Cuba's hidden jet battle. We'll explore the sophisticated aircraft involved, the desperate decisions made by commanders on the ground, and how by sheer luck and last-minute restraint, a singular dogfight didn't ignite a global catastrophe. This is the story of how a few tense moments in the air shaped the entire trajectory of the Cold War, and why, even now, we owe a debt to the shadows of history. Before the precise ballet of a jet dogfight, before the terrifying calculus of nuclear brinkmanship, the problem was one of reconnaissance and interdiction. How do you know what your adversary is doing, especially in an era of rapidly escalating tensions? And once you know, how do you stop them, or at least deter them, without triggering a wider conflict? These questions, simple in their asking, have driven military innovation for centuries. From the earliest days of warfare, armies sought to gain an advantage through observation. Scouts, spies, and even hot air balloons in the 19th century were rudimentary attempts to peer over the enemy's lines. The advent of the airplane in the early 20th century revolutionized this. Suddenly, an eye in the sky offered an unparalleled view of the battlefield, providing intelligence that could turn the tide of a battle. Early thinkers and military strategists quickly grasped the potential, designing aircraft not just for bombing or combat, but specifically for aerial photography and surveillance. During World War I and II, reconnaissance aircraft became critical. They were often unarmed or lightly armed, relying on speed and altitude to evade enemy fighters. But as aircraft technology advanced, so did the means to intercept them. This led to the development of early fighter aircraft designed to shoot down enemy bombers and reconnaissance planes. The concept of the dogfight, a close-quarters aerial combat, became enshrined in military lore, a test of pilot skill and machine performance. However, the Cold War presented a new, far more dangerous challenge. The stakes were no longer just tactical advantage, but existential survival. With the rise of the Soviet Union's closed society, reliable intelligence on their military capabilities, especially their nuclear program, became paramount. Traditional reconnaissance methods were insufficient. This led to a desperate need for aircraft that could fly higher, faster, and remain undetected over hostile territory. Early attempts to achieve this involved pushing existing bomber designs to their limits, stripping them down for weight, and adding specialized cameras. But these were still vulnerable. Failed attempts often included aircraft shot down, pilots captured, or missions compromised. The fundamental problem was the increasing sophistication of Soviet air defenses, particularly their ground-to-air missiles, SAMs, and high-altitude interceptors. How could reconnaissance be conducted over such a heavily defended adversary without sparking an all-out war? This question became the driving force behind the development of the ultimate spy planes and the desperate measures taken to stop them. setting the stage for the clandestine aerial confrontations that would define the Cold War. The spark that ignited the era of high-altitude strategic reconnaissance, directly setting the stage for the Cuban crisis, came from the urgent, almost desperate, need for intelligence on Soviet capabilities. The perceived bomber gap and later, the missile gap of the 1950s pushed the United States to seek an aircraft that could fly so high it would be untouchable by Soviet interceptors and early surface-to-air missiles. This seemingly insurmountable problem found its answer in a revolutionary aircraft, the U-2 Dragon Lady. The key inventor and driving force behind the U-2 was Clarence Kelly Johnson, the legendary head of Lockheed's advanced development projects, famously known as the Skunk Works. Johnson was an aeronautical engineering genius, renowned for his ability to design groundbreaking aircraft under extreme secrecy and tight deadlines. His motivation was clear: to build an aircraft that could provide photographic intelligence over hostile territory without being shot down, a task deemed impossible by many. His background, steeped in a pragmatic, no-nonsense approach to engineering, allowed him to discard conventional thinking. The first working prototype of the U-2, initially designated CL-282, was built with astonishing speed. Its maiden flight was in August 1955. Its function was deceptively simple: fly extremely high, carry a powerful camera, and remain undetected. But its genius lay in its radical design. It was essentially a powered glider with long, slender wings reminiscent of gliders that allowed it to reach altitudes exceeding 70,000 feet, over 21,000 meters, far above the operational ceiling of any contemporary fighter jet or SAM system. The major technical breakthroughs were severalfold. Firstly, its lightweight yet strong airframe, optimized for high-altitude flight, was revolutionary. Secondly, the development of a highly reliable, high-thrust Pratt & Whitney J57P37 turbojet engine, specifically modified for sustained high-altitude performance, was crucial. But perhaps the most vital breakthrough was the camera system itself. Designed by James Baker and developed by Perkin Elmer, these specialized cameras could photograph vast swaths of territory with incredible resolution from extreme altitudes, providing unprecedented detail of Soviet military installations. Obstacles were immense. Technical hurdles included the challenge of creating a pressurized cockpit for pilots at near-space altitudes, developing specialized fuel that wouldn't freeze, and the sheer difficulty of safely landing such a unique, high-aspect ratio aircraft, which was notoriously tricky to handle at low speeds. Social and political obstacles involved convincing skeptical military leaders that such a fragile-looking aircraft could evade the Soviets, and critically, maintaining absolute secrecy around its development and operations. Financial constraints were significant for a project of this nature, but the overwhelming intelligence imperative meant virtually unlimited funding was eventually provided. Johnson and his team overcame these by their relentless problem-solving, willingness to challenge norms, and the creation of a highly insulated, secretive work environment that fostered rapid innovation. The world's first reaction to the U-2 was one of complete unawareness outside of a very tight circle of U.S. and Allied intelligence. For years, its existence was a closely guarded secret. For the Soviets, their reaction was one of escalating frustration and desperation as these phantom aircraft repeatedly flew over their most sensitive sites, untouchable and unseen. This inability to counter the U-2 directly fueled their own frantic development of high-altitude interceptors and surface-to-air missiles, setting the stage for the inevitable, dangerous confrontations that would define the Cold War's aerial chess match. The spark was struck, and the Cold War skies would never be the same. The U-2's initial, unchallenged reign over Soviet skies marked the beginning of a dangerous ascent in aerial reconnaissance, and inevitably, the parallel evolution of interceptor technology. From the mid-1950s to the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, This period was characterized by a relentless cat-and-mouse game, pushing both spy planes and their pursuers to their technological limits. The prize was critical intelligence, the stakes nothing less than global survival. The U-2 program itself saw rapid operationalization and refinement from 1956 onwards. What changed? The aircraft became more reliable, its cameras more sophisticated, and its missions more frequent and daring, penetrating deeper into Soviet airspace. Who was responsible? The CIA, under Project Aquatone, managed the covert operations, while Kelly Johnson and Lockheed continued to refine the aircraft. What was improved? Mission duration, camera resolution, and operational secrecy. The U-2 provided photographic proof of Soviet bomber and missile deployments, directly informing U.S. strategic decisions and alleviating the bomber gap scare. How was it received by the world? Officially, its existence remained a secret with U.S. weather. Research used as cover. For the Soviets, their reception was one of intense humiliation and strategic vulnerability, fueling a desperate race to develop countermeasures. This Soviet desperation led to their own crucial milestone, the development and deployment of effective surface-to-air missiles, SAMs. Up to the late 1950s, their interceptor aircraft struggled to reach the U-2's altitude. The breakthrough came with the S-75 Dina, NATO reporting name ESA-2 guideline, SAM system. What changed? This was a revolutionary system, combining high-altitude missiles with sophisticated radar guidance. Who was responsible? Soviet engineers, with significant investment from their military. What was improved? The ability to engage high-flying targets that conventional fighters couldn't reach. The SA-2 was specifically designed to counter high-altitude threats. How was it received? Its existence was a closely guarded Soviet secret until it achieved its most dramatic success. That success came on May 1, 1960, when a Soviet SA-2 missile shot down U-2 pilot Francis Gary Powers over Soviet territory. What changed? This single event shattered the myth of the U-2's invulnerability and exposed the entire covert intelligence program. It led to a massive international incident, derailing a crucial UC-Soviet summit. Who was responsible? Soviet air defense forces. What was improved? From a Soviet perspective, it was a major validation of their SAM technology and a propaganda coup. From a U.S. perspective, it exposed a critical vulnerability and forced a reassessment of aerial reconnaissance tactics. How was it received by the world? With outrage and diplomatic chaos. The U.S. was caught lying about its weather flights, severely damaging its international standing and intensifying Cold War tensions. This milestone effectively ended direct U-2 overflights of the Soviet Union. The downing of Powers forced the U.S. to look for alternative, even more extreme reconnaissance solutions. This led to the rapid acceleration of the SR-71 Blackbird program. While not deployed during the Cuban Missile Crisis, its genesis directly stems from the U-2's vulnerability. What changed? The SR-71 aimed for speed and altitude beyond anything seen before, Mach 3 and altitudes over 85,000 feet, designed to simply outrun and outclimb any missile or fighter. Who was responsible? Again, Kelly Johnson and Lockheed Skunk Works. What was improved? Unmatched speed and altitude for reconnaissance, making it virtually invulnerable. How was it received? Developed in extreme secrecy, it symbolized the next generation of strategic reconnaissance. This entire chronological ascent of both spy planes and their missile interceptors set the immediate stage for the Cuban Missile Crisis, when Soviet missiles were discovered in Cuba in October 1962. The U-2 was the only asset capable of providing the critical high-altitude photographic intelligence needed to confirm the threat. The tension was palpable. The U.S. knew the Soviets had SA-2 South after the Powers incident. The Soviets knew U.S. South were flying over Cuba. This created a highly volatile situation where every flight, every radar blip, and every potential intercept risked spiraling out of control into the very dogfight that almost started World War III. The knowledge of what the SA-2 could do, combined with the desperate need for intelligence, transformed the skies over Cuba into one of the most dangerous arenas of the Cold War. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 and the intense aerial cat-and-mouse game that defined it triggered a profound revolution in military strategy and intelligence gathering. It wasn't about a single invention exploding into the mainstream, but rather the man-stramming of high stakes, real-time aerial intelligence, and the urgent necessity of advanced air defense against a new class of threats. The crisis pinpointed when strategic reconnaissance became an absolutely indispensable frontline capability and when the vulnerability to advanced missile threats became a palpable existential dread for superpowers and smaller nations alike. Why now? The answer was simple: nuclear weapons. The discovery of Soviet medium-range ballistic missiles, MRBNs, in Cuba, capable of striking major U.S. cities, transformed theoretical threat into imminent reality. The sheer speed of the crisis, the rapid deployment, and the immediate terrifying proximity of nuclear war meant there was no time for traditional intelligence gathering or slow diplomatic responses. Rapid, accurate aerial reconnaissance provided by the U-2 became the single most critical source of information, directly informing President Kennedy's decisions. The U-2 wasn't just a spy plane. It was the eyes of the world, confirming the threat and shaping the entire response. It was governments, specifically the U.S. and Soviet Union, that led the charge, pouring unprecedented resources into reconnaissance, missile technology, and countermeasures. The crisis demonstrated that the side with superior actionable intelligence could hold a vital advantage, and that the side with robust air defense could potentially mitigate catastrophic attacks. This immediate and profound shift started changing daily life, industry, communication, and culture in several key ways. Intelligence priority, post-Cuba, aerial reconnaissance and satellite intelligence moved from niche covert operations to top-tier strategic necessities. This led to massive investment in spy satellites, advanced reconnaissance aircraft, and intelligence analysis centers. The eyes in the sky became fundamental to national security. Industries like aerospace, optics, and computing gained massive funding, driving rapid innovation for surveillance technologies. Missile defense urgency, the vulnerability exposed by the V-2 surprise attacks during World War II and amplified by the Cuban crisis, made missile defense a central pillar of military planning. While the ABM Treaty later limited full-scale systems, the crisis spurred intense research into radar, interceptor technology, and integrated air defense networks. Every nation with strategic assets recognized the need to protect against missile threats, leading to a global proliferation of surface-to-air missile systems. Crisis management and communication. The near-catastrophe forced an overhaul of Cold War communication protocols. The notorious delay in exchanging messages during the crisis led directly to the establishment of the Moscow-Washington hotline, the Red Phone, transforming superpower communication from slow diplomatic cables to instantaneous, direct contact. This, in turn, influenced global diplomatic communication and crisis management protocols, public awareness, and fear. The Cuban Missile Crisis profoundly impacted global culture. For the first time, the general public worldwide was acutely aware of the existential threat of nuclear war brought home by the images of missiles on Cuban soil. This fueled peace movements, anti-nuclear protests, but also a quiet understanding that a new, terrifying era of warfare had arrived, fundamentally changing the psychological landscape of the Cold War for decades. The aerial confrontations above Cuba were not just a fleeting skirmish. They were the crucible in which the modern doctrines of strategic intelligence, missile defense, and nuclear deterrence were forged, leaving an indelible mark on how nations perceive and manage global conflict. In the decades since the Cuban Missile Crisis, the lessons learned from that terrifying aerial dance have driven continuous, profound advancements in both reconnaissance and air defense. What were once cutting-edge technologies born of Cold War, paranoia are now highly refined, diversified, and integrated systems, shaping modern warfare and global security. The relentless march of digital computing, sensor miniaturization, and artificial intelligence has revolutionized these capabilities. What has changed in the last 20 years? The shift has been towards ubiquity, automation, and multi-domain integration. In reconnaissance, the U-2's legacy lives on, but the methods have diversified dramatically. While the U-2 itself still flies, often updated with modern sensors, the true revolution is in satellite intelligence. Orbiting constellations of spy satellites, electro-optical synthetic aperture radar, SAR, SIGINT, provide continuous global coverage with unprecedented resolution. Complementing this are high-altitude, long-endurance Hale UAVs like the RQ-4 Global Hawk, which offer persistent, stealthy surveillance over specific regions for days at a time. The advent of small tactical drones has also revolutionized battlefield reconnaissance, providing real-time intelligence at the squad level. Key players now include national intelligence agencies like the NRO in the U.S. and major aerospace companies, for example, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, alongside numerous smaller drone manufacturers. Modern uses range from strategic arms, control verification and counterterrorism to disaster assessment and agricultural monitoring. Issues include increasing counterspace capabilities by adversaries, data overload, and the ethical implications of pervasive surveillance. For air defense, the lessons of 1962, particularly the danger of unintercepted threats, led to the development of sophisticated layered air defense systems. The past 2 decades have seen significant improvements in phased array radars with incredible range and precision, capable of tracking hundreds of targets simultaneously. Interceptor missiles have become more agile, faster, and capable of hit-to-kill. Intercepts, destroying targets by direct impact, not just blast fragmentation, such as the U.S. THAAD and Standard Missile-3 SM-3 systems. Furthermore, the diversification of threats to include cruise missiles, drones, and even hypersonic glide vehicles has led to specialized countermeasures. The Iron Dome, as discussed previously, epitomizes the capability against mass, short-range threats. Key players in modern air defense include giants like Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, U.S., Almaz-Antey, Russia, and MBDA, Europe, among others. The scale of impact is global. Nearly every nation now invests in multi-layered air defense, from short-range point defense to national ballistic missile shields. This protects not only military assets, but also critical civilian infrastructure and population centers. Briefly, contemporary issues include the proliferation of advanced defensive missiles and drones to non-state actors, the challenge of hypersonic missile defense, and the sheer cost and complexity of maintaining these cutting-edge systems. The inherent fog of war and in aerial combat, demonstrated acutely in 1962, still persists, even with advanced technology, emphasizing the critical role of human decision-making amidst highly automated systems. The dogfight that almost started. World War III remains a potent reminder of the thin line between deterrence and disaster. The world before the shadow of the Cuban Missile Crisis and its hidden aerial skirmishes was one where leaders could misinterpret intentions for days, where vital intelligence arrived slowly, and where the threat of air attack was still largely from manned bombers. The very idea of an accidental nuclear war triggered by a misunderstanding in the skies was a terrifying theoretical construct, not a hair's breadth reality. The events of October 1962, particularly the aerial component, irrevocably altered global politics, military strategy, and even civilian awareness. Here's how parts of life were permanently changed. Intelligence primacy. The crisis cemented the absolute, undeniable importance of real-time, accurate intelligence. The U-2's photographs were the linchpin of Kennedy's strategy, allowing him to confirm the Soviet missile deployment, and avoid rash decisions based on speculation. This elevated strategic reconnaissance, from high-altitude aircraft to the nascent spy satellites to the highest national security priority. It justified colossal investments in intelligence gathering, forever changing how superpowers monitored each other, leading directly to advancements in satellite imagery, electronic surveillance, and human intelligence, crisis communication, and de-escalation, the terrifying near misses and communication delays of 1962, including the lack of direct, secure lines between Washington and Moscow, spurred immediate action. This directly led to the establishment of the Moscow-Washington hotline, the Red Phone. In 1963, this seemingly simple innovation fundamentally changed superpower diplomacy, allowing for rapid, direct communication during future crises, a vital tool for de-escalation that remains influential in international relations today. It formalized a recognition that communication breakdown could lead to global catastrophe. Air defense imperative, the vulnerability exposed, both by Soviet missiles in Cuba and the very real threat of engaging U.S. reconnaissance planes, underscored the critical need for advanced air defense systems. This spurred further development of SAM's radar networks and eventually integrated air defense concepts that could track and potentially intercept a wide array of aerial threats, from bombers to missiles. Nations globally began investing heavily in multi-layered air defense, a direct legacy of the fear ignited in 1962. Managed brinkmanship and nuclear deterrence. The crisis provided a chilling, real-world lesson in managed brinkmanship. Both sides peered into the nuclear abyss and recoiled. It solidified the concept of mutually assured destruction, MAD, as a perverse form of stability, but also led to subsequent arms control treaties, like the Limited Test Ban Treaty, aimed at preventing such terrifying standoffs from recurring. The fear of an accidental aerial engagement triggering a wider conflict profoundly shaped military doctrine for decades. This was a profound turning point in human history, demonstrating how close we came to self-annihilation. The lessons of those harrowing days, particularly the fragility of peace and the critical role of intelligence and clear communication, continued to reverberate. The dogfight that almost started World War III serves as an enduring, stark reminder of the immense stakes involved when advanced technology meets geopolitical tension, and why vigilance and restraint remain paramount. The ghost of that almost dogfight over Cuba in 1962 continues to haunt and shape the future of military aviation, intelligence, and crisis management. The lessons of those harrowing days are more relevant than ever in an era of proliferating advanced weaponry and complex geopolitical flashpoints. So, what's next for the descendants of these reconnaissance aircraft and the systems designed to counter them? For reconnaissance, the trends are towards hyper-persistence, multispectral fusion, and extreme autonomy. Satellites are becoming smaller, more numerous, and capable of near-continuous surveillance, integrating not just optical and radar imagery, but also signals intelligence, SIGINT, and even hyperspectral data to detect subtle changes. High-altitude, long-endurance platforms are evolving into next-generation uncrewed aircraft systems, UAS, that can fly for weeks or even months, powered by solar or advanced propulsion, operating semi-autonomously or as part of AI-driven swarms. Experts predict a future where persistent, all-weather surveillance of any point on Earth is possible, constantly feeding vast amounts of data. This will include advanced left-of-launch intelligence, detecting missile preparations or unusual activity even before a hostile act occurs. In air defense, the evolution is driven by the urgent need to counter hypersonic missiles, stealth aircraft, and massive drone swarms. Current R&D is focused on networked, distributed air defense systems, where every sensor and every shooter is connected in real time, leveraging AI to prioritize threats and orchestrate responses across vast areas. This includes directed energy, weapons, lasers, and high-power microwaves for cost-effective, high-volume drone interception, and kinetic interceptors designed for the extreme speeds and maneuvers of hypersonic threats. There's also intense work on counter-stealth technologies, new radar bands or quantum sensing methods designed to detect even the most advanced low-observable aircraft. Intelligent speculation suggests a future where the line between reconnaissance and combat blurs even further. Uncrewed combat aerial vehicles, UCAVs, may become the primary platform for both intelligence gathering and precision strike, operating with a high degree of autonomy. The OODA loop, observe, orient, decide, act, a concept crucial in dogfighting, will be compressed to near instantaneous speeds by AI, potentially challenging human decision-making in high-stakes moments. Could this lead to more rapid de-escalation by providing undeniable evidence, or conversely, increase the risk of accidental escalation due to machine speed overriding human caution? The ghost of that 1962 dogfight, a reminder of how quickly a localized incident can spiral, means the focus will also be on AI-driven crisis management tools, systems that can analyze intelligence, predict escalation pathways, and suggest de-escalatory measures in real time. But the fundamental questions remain. Can technology truly eliminate the human element of risk and miscalculation? And will the ability to see everything lead to greater peace or simply new forms of unseen conflict? My sincerest apologies. You are absolutely right. I completely missed Section 9 for the dogfight that almost started World War III, Cuba's hidden jet battle, 1962. Thank you for catching that. From the strategic imperative to gather intelligence, through the terrifying breakthroughs of high-altitude reconnaissance and advanced missile defense, and culminating in the harrowing aerial close calls over Cuba in 1962, we've explored a hidden chapter of the Cold War. This was a conflict fought not just in diplomatic rooms, but in the thin, unforgiving air where a single act of combat could have unleashed a global catastrophe. The dogfight that never fully erupted remains a chilling testament to the razor's edge of nuclear brinkmanship. The legacy of those tense days in the skies over Cuba cannot be overstated. It underscored the fragile balance of power, forcing global leaders to establish direct communication, refine crisis management, and forever change the way intelligence is gathered and utilized in an interconnected, high-stakes world. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into one of history's most pivotal, yet often overlooked, moments. If this untold story resonated with you, please like this video to help us share these important narratives. Share it with others who are fascinated by history's hidden corners, and comment your thoughts below. What surprised you most about this secret aerial battle? And for more explorations into the technological innovations and historical events that shaped our world, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell